Did you see it? There, I'm sorry. I apologized sincerely to her. What I'd accidentally seen was running through my mind. She looked as if she were about to cry, and I felt awful about it. But unfortunately, the image in my head was not going to fade away. What I had seen of her had a significant impact on me. My name is Taylor Mason. After graduating from university, I joined the workforce like any other newbie. There was still a lot for me to learn at work, and to top it off, my boss was a hardcore jock. I was often scolded for repeating the same mistakes every day. "Hey, Mason, you've made another data entry error. How many times is this now?" "I'm sorry." I was the worst performing member among my peers. I had always been bad at managing multiple tasks, which led to me making more mistakes when there's a lot to do. I was constantly getting yelled at work, and I couldn't help but sigh, wondering how things came to this. In university, all I had to do was understand the lecture content, so my grades were good. I thought I'd be able to manage in the real world too, but I was wrong. In reality, I was just a bottom-tier employee who kept making mistakes, and I was starting to despise myself. One day, carrying all these feelings, I bought a microwave dinner from a convenience store on my way home from work. I simply didn't have the energy to cook for myself. I usually got home late at night. And since I lived in a small apartment, there was rarely anyone around. As usual, I opened my apartment door, and that's when it happened. Meow. A cat came up to me. The fur was too clean for a stray, and the cat seemed used to people. This apartment allows pets, so it might belong to someone, but where did it come from? As I was wondering about this, the cat sauntered into my apartment through the open door. "Hey, you can't just go in. Fluffy, has Fluffy come back?" Hearing the cat's meow, my neighbor burst out of her door. I turned to look. She was a woman, probably in her early 20s, and she had rushed out in a worn-out sports bra. I was speechless. She had come out in such a hurry that she was barefoot, and she was showing so much skin that I panicked for a moment, thinking she was naked. When she saw that her cat had entered my apartment, she said, "I'm sorry, that's my cat." Oh, here, she realized that she was only in her underwear and turned her face bright red. "I'm sorry, that's my cat. I'll get him out right away." With that, she rushed back into her apartment, returning in about 30 seconds. She was clearly just wearing a hoodie over her sports bra. I didn't want the cat to get hurt inside my apartment, but I was also hesitant to invite a woman into my place at night. So, I said, "I'll try to catch the cat. Just wait here," and attempted to catch the cat. But I couldn't. Was it always hard to catch a cat? Left with no other choice, I had to ask the woman to come inside and catch the cat herself. The cat didn't resist when the woman tried to catch it. It just went with the flow. "I'm sorry for the trouble. I'll make it up to you another day." Saying that, the woman left as it was getting late. Well, she was dressed quite oddly. The next Saturday, the woman came to visit, bringing some sweets with her. I led her into the room to check if the cat hadn't broken anything, and we sat down for a cup of tea. Honestly, since I had let her in my room yesterday, I didn't resist much. Her name is Julia Roberts. She seemed to be a college student, and from the big shoulder bag she brought, it seemed she probably planned to study somewhere after this. She owned a cat named Fluffy. Actually, yesterday Fluffy went out onto the balcony, and I heard him crying at night, so I rushed out in such a strange outfit. Julia was blushing as she explained. "Oh, Fluffy scratched me up pretty bad. It's even more embarrassing to be seen like this. Cats can be quite a handful, huh? I heard cats scratch everything around them when they need to sharpen their claws. So, their clothes got scratched occasionally. but it costed a lot to buy new ones each time, so they wore them when they're not meeting anyone. I'm really sorry for the trouble. Don't worry about it. Just take good care of your cat. Julia thanked me again and got up to leave. But at that moment, her shoulder bag fell over and all the documents inside spilled out. Are you okay? As I scrambled to gather the papers, she exclaimed, No, no. She quickly snatched the papers away from me. But I had seen it. The documents were notices of re-examinations from her university. And there were so many of them. The number of re-examinations was so large, it made me worry about her credit completion. Did you see it? Yes, I'm sorry. I apologized sincerely. At that, Julia blushed deeper than when she had been seen in her underwear, her face on the verge of tears. Everyone says it. They say college is a piece of cake if you attend lectures, but it's impossible for me. I'm not smart. Wah. Overwhelmed with emotion, Julia collapsed right where she stood. It seemed her academic performance was severely to the point where not only graduation, but even progressing to the next grade was in jeopardy. She had always been made fun of for her grades, and it seemed she had developed a complex, or rather, a trauma about it. Well, if you want, I could help you with your studies. No, I went to the same university. I took the same courses you're having re-examinations for. Really? What a coincidence. Julia was attending the same university I had. So that made her my junior. Julia was quick to take up on my offer. It seemed she had tried asking her friends for help with her studies before, but kept making the same mistakes, and they had given up on her. Well, I did have good grades in university, and depending on the subject, there are tips and tricks. Maybe if I taught her those, she might just make it. So, we decided to have a study session every Saturday. Well, after seeing the sheer amount of re-exams she was facing, I was quite worried and couldn't get it off my mind. I finished work and bought dinner on the way home, so I got home a bit late. So, I had planned to make our break on Saturday, but it turned out that Julia had an imagination that far exceeded my expectations. She was constantly coming up with answers that I had no idea how she arrived at. Honestly, our weekly study sessions were not enough. So, I decided to add additional study sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Julia's house. This was also because Julia suggested, let me cook dinner as a thank you for the study sessions. Teaching someone is also a way of studying for yourself, so I made an effort to explain the problems that Julia seemed to have difficulty with in a way that was easy to understand. Julia seemed to be studying hard in her own way and gradually improved her grades. As for me, I started to take more notice of my surroundings and my minor mistakes decreased. The number of days I could get through without being shouted at increased, and there were fewer hard times at work. And then, 6 months later, I did it. I don't have any resits anymore. Finally, Julia was freed from the hell of resits. Julia was able to understand the lectures after 6 months of study, and she no longer needed my help. It felt a little lonely, but I should be genuinely happy for her growth. Well done, you worked really hard. If you don't understand something, tell me, okay? Yes, thank you. The study meetings ended with that, but the habit of meeting for half a year didn't just disappear. So, I had the chance to eat Julia's dinners occasionally, and I also invited her for meals. We also talked about things like what kind of company to work for and other life advice. A few months passed like this, and Julia was able to move up a grade. I was thinking of giving her a present to celebrate her advancement. Just as I was thinking about this while heading to work, there was something on my desk. It was a document, but not just any document. personnel change, and I'm the assistant to the president. I was dumbfounded by the document informing me of an unexpected personnel change. Suddenly, my boss patted my shoulder and I jumped. "The president is calling for you. Follow me." With that, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. What did I do? I desperately tried to remember, but I couldn't think of anything. I made my way to the president's office with a stiff body. There were guests in the president's office besides the president. It seemed that I had been called to the president's office because these guests wanted to see me. "Sorry for calling you all of a sudden. These are the owners of Roberts Inc., our business partners." Introduced by the president, I bowed my head. "Wait, Roberts? That's the same surname as Julia. What a coincidence." As I sat on the sofa as directed, the Roberts couple smiled at me. "Nice to meet you. We are from Roberts Inc. No, let's leave the title aside. We came here as parents to thank you and ask you a favor," the president of Roberts said to me. I was completely lost for words and just stared blankly. "Actually, the Julia you've been tutoring is our daughter. We heard that she was able to move up a grade thanks to your help. Thank you so much." No, it was all thanks to Julia's efforts that she was able to move up a grade. So, it turned out that Julia was the president's daughter. I had no idea. I was just surprised. According to Mr. Thompson, the CEO, Julia had her pride and wanted to fend for herself without depending on her parents. It seemed that she started living on her own because of this. "I heard about you from my daughter. I wanted to express my gratitude for everything you've done for her, and I apologize for the inconvenience, but would you please continue to help her with her studies?" he said. With these words, both the CEO and his wife bowed deeply in thanks. What? Please lift your heads," I protested. Being shown such respect by the CEO, a man like me, just an ordinary employee, felt quite awkward. After a few insistences, they finally raised their heads. Apparently, Julia had always had bad grades since she was young. She had received tutoring from various people, but it seems the only one who could make a real difference was me. Julia trusted me, and the ridiculous personnel change that made me the CEO's secretary happened so that it would be easier for me to adjust my work schedule. Our CEO was quite capable, so he didn't need an assistant. His permission allowed me to go to Julia's place at any time. In other words, I don't have any right to refuse. But why did the CEO go to such lengths? Was it simply because he valued this business relationship that much? Actually, we've been friends since we were kids. You know, the so-called best buddies. I've known Julia since she was a little girl, and I've been as troubled as anyone else by her academic performance," he revealed. Because I seemed puzzled, the CEO was kind enough to explain our relationship. Apparently, when Julia was in high school, the CEO used to supervise her studies. She managed to pass her college entrance exams, but it seems she ended up in a sort of remedial hell. Of course, my salary remained the same even though my department had changed, so it's a win-win situation for me, or so it should be. However, this lack of a right to refuse showed me the frightening power that adults with authority hold. And so, it was decided that I would be taking care of Julia, approved by both her parents and the company. Julia's academic performance has improved slightly, but I can't let my guard down. She seemed to have received a failing grade in a new course she started right after advancing to the next grade. Your assistance again would be much appreciated. Likewise, I responded. Julia looked a bit embarrassed, but I felt rather glad to have this connection with her. In this way, I supported Julia and was sometimes supported by her, and before I knew it, Julia is now my wife. You never know what life has in store for you. Who would have thought that the college girl I saw in her underwear the first time we met would become my wife? But it seems Julia is still hung up on the mountain of remedial notices, more so than the fact that I saw her in her underwear, playfully telling me to take responsibility for that time as she asks me to help her study. Though the studying she was referring to now was not academic learning, but rather business manners and other basic knowledge for working adults. The CEO was also delighted. Who would have thought that Julia would grow so much? He's an amazing person who single-handedly started the company and continues to grow it. The level of the Harpo performance that even such a CEO struggled with. I still don't know about Julia's past grades, but it seems it's better not to know about it. That's how I'm happily living my life now. But when I really think about it, the catalyst for me discovering Julia's retake notices was when Fluffy wandered into my room. In that sense, I should really be thankful to Fluffy for dropping by my room. Meow. The Cupid of our love spent another day curled up under the sunshine. I'm Mike Knopfwood, a 28-year-old businessman. I work for a pretty big and famous company in my hometown. I'm part of the sales team, and there's a business drinking party almost every night. The clients seem to really like the place I chose for the gathering, so I think it was successful. I felt a sigh of relief. My boss is whispering something to our CEO. Looks like he's planning for the next place. Probably, they're going to a fancy place with attractive ladies, along with our client CEO. I guess us regular employees are calling it quits here. We hailed taxis for the higher-ups to send them off. Our tipsy CEOs seemed to be in high spirits. We made sure nothing was left behind with seniors, and then us regular employees dispersed. My colleagues were heading off to a bar, but I'm not much of a drinker. Despite the invite, I declined and decided to head home early. I wanted to enjoy my only hobby, gaming, when I got home. As I was excitedly heading home, I heard a dispute in a side alley off the main street. Normally, I ignore it, but I stopped in my tracks when I heard a young woman's voice. Squinting into the dark alley, I could see a girl about college-aged and a man about my age arguing about something. The man seemed to be forcing the girl, and she was clearly uncomfortable. "Hey, stop that." She tried to keep her voice down, but it was clear she was rejecting him. The man was holding her arm, seemingly trying to forcefully take her somewhere. The girl appeared to be about the same age as my younger sister. "Hey, maybe you shouldn't be forcing her like that," I called out quietly towards the back of the alley. The man turned around and glared at me. From just one glance, I could tell he was wearing a well-tailored suit. His tie is designer-made. His leather shoes are nicely polished. He seems like a rich kid. "Back off, you're out of your league, man." Quite a mouth on him for a privileged kid. Maybe he's a rich brat gone bad. I sigh inwardly. I just wanted to go home and play games. Stepping into the alley, the humidity instantly rises above the level of the main street. It's probably damp air from the air conditioners attached to both sides of the buildings. But she seems uncomfortable, and you're acting like a thug, so I can't just ignore this. While saying that, I nonchalantly grab his hand, shielding the girl behind me. Talking circles around people is something I'm good at. "Hey, Ginny, do you know this guy?" the man yells as he tries to violently grab the shoulder of the girl behind me. I shield her, making sure his hand doesn't reach her. He clicks his tongue, and then attacked with pretty heavy punch. I absolutely hate violence. I was blown to the wall of a building, hitting my back hard. I taste iron in my mouth. The man looks down at me, now slumped against the building wall. There's a vulgar grin on his face. These kind of guys never stop at one punch. He's the type who gets excited by the violence he inflicts. Just as I try to escape, a kick to my stomach makes me groan. See, just as I thought. I nearly laugh at how well I've read him. Just as the man clenches his fist again, the girl thrusts her smartphone screen in his face. If you don't stop, I'm calling police. Are you planning to make your dad clean up the mess again? She says this with a voice so cold, it's like she's mocking him. Maybe he didn't believe she'd actually call the police because his fist clenches tighter. Without hesitation, she starts using her smartphone. From the speakerphone, you can hear the voice of a police officer answering a 911 call. He keeps asking, "What's your emergency?" The man lowers the fist he'd raised and clicks his tongue. "Don't run, Jenny." The man says this and runs off down the alley. She ends the call only after making sure he's gone. "We should move before the police arrive. You don't want any more trouble, right?" She grabs my arm to help me up, and then lends me her shoulder as I wobble. Her side profile is a real beauty, but with a hint of darkness, a pure yet mysterious beauty. By the time we reach a bench in a park away from the alley, we're both sweating. She made me sit on the bench and buys a couple of bottles of water from a vending machine. She gave me one and uses the other to dampen her handkerchief and gently wipes my face. I rinse my mouth with the water she gave me, but I can still taste iron. It looks like I've cut the inside of my mouth quite a bit. "We need to get you to a hospital. You're bleeding." She says this with a worried look while holding the cold handkerchief to my wounds. "I'm fine. It's not as painful as it looks. Are you hurt anywhere?" At my words, she opens her eyes wide in surprise. Then, tilting her head slightly, she looks at me in puzzle. Did I say something strange? Just as I was about to open my mouth again, her slender hand moved swiftly. Before I knew it, my suit jacket was whisked away. Excuse me. Suddenly stripped of my jacket, I was flustered. "I'll get it cleaned and return it. I'm sorry, but could you please provide your contact details?" She said this in a polite but firm tone. She quickly tossed over items that were in the pocket. When she found a business card holder in an inner pocket, she smiled. "I'll take a business card if you don't mind." "Pardon me." She promptly pulled out a card, and she tossed it over to me. She took the business card, pausing for a moment. "I'll be in touch. A call from a college girl must be a nightmare. Give me your number." It seemed like I had run into a charming thief. As I told her my number, she repeated it without taking a note. She then introduced herself as Jenny Garcia. Just as I was about to say that the cleaning wasn't necessary, my phone started ringing. The caller ID prominently displayed my boss's name. The message was urgent. The CEO of a client company was drunk, and I was needed for help. "Sorry, I got some work to do." I left her in the park as I rushed off. It was regrettable, but I had no choice. She watched me silently from within the park until I hailed a taxi and got in. A week later, I received a call from the charming thief during my lunch break. She must have timed it to catch me on my break. I didn't recognize the number, but I had a hunch it might be her. "The cleaning is done. So when can we meet?" I told her I would be free after work tomorrow. "I'll send you the meeting place via text." And she hung up the call. The meeting place she texted was a restaurant I'm not familiar with. Her message sighed, as a token of my appreciation, "Let's have a meal." It's a restaurant picked by a college student, so it probably won't be anything too fancy. I prepared a bit of extra cash in my wallet and headed to the designated restaurant the next day. And now, I'm scared. The restaurant is not for students, and I was led to a private room hidden behind a concealed door. Frozen in place, I was sitting rigidly when she arrived a little late. "I'm sorry for making you wait," she apologized, bowing her head. I barely managed to respond with a weak, "It's fine." She sat down on the pulled-out chair like usually and ordered the chef's recommended course. Dishes that I've never tasted before appeared, delighting both my eyes and palate. Like magic, drinks were refilled at just the right timing, and the friendly waiter helped to ease my tension. The final dessert was served in front of me, and cheese was placed before her. Being a lover of sweet things, it was the best cake I've ever had in my life. You're not having the cake. I don't like sweets," she admitted, her face darkening a bit. "I used to be fine with it," she added with a smile. "Tastes change as we grow, and not every girl in the world loves cake." I simply responded, "Is that so?" and shrugged it off at the time. During the meal, we had all sorts of conversations. The guy who had bothered her turned out to be her fiancée, Jenny. She talked about marrying right after graduating from college, but she didn't seem happy about it. I could easily tell something was going on. "Aren't you too young to be getting married already?" I blurted out. Jenny merely smiled awkwardly in response to my question, not saying a word. She seemed resigned, and her smile could also be interpreted as a knowing smirk. In just 2.5 hours, I found myself wanting to know more about her. When I reached for my card to tackle the bill I was dreading, I was told it had already been paid. "It's on me as you helped me," she said with a smile, handing me my freshly cleaned jacket. As we left the restaurant, she quickly said goodbye and began to leave. "Wait, I have a proposal," I blurted out, desperately wanting to keep her from leaving. Upon being called, Christine slowly turned around. The sight of her looking straight at me was breathtakingly beautiful. "If you get married soon, let's do the things you won't be able to do once you're married." She looked surprised at my words, her eyes widening. It was a bold proposal, but it was all I could think of. Jenny, who is set to marry that guy right after graduation. And clearly, it wasn't a marriage she wanted. So I thought, why not enjoy her freedom until she gets married? I wanted to see her smiling, preferably by my side. "What a proposal," she said, her voice filled with a hint of disbelief. Suddenly, I felt embarrassed. When I timidly asked, "So, is it a no-go?" Jenny shook her head. "Where are you taking me for our fun day out?" she asked with excitement. I was relieved to see her anticipation. "Well, let's start planning then," I said, and she nodded in agreement. And just like that, she smoothly linked her arm with mine. Thus began our little game of playing lovers. From that day, Jenny and I went on many dates in various places. There was no rule as to who should ask, but it was always me inviting, and her accepting. There were a lot of things I learned from our numerous dates. She was more of a sheltered lady than I had imagined. She was too excited with the aquarium, and being childish as she wanted to touch penguins. At the zoo, she fussed about wanting to take home a baby lion. During a horse riding, Jenny, an experienced rider, left me behind and ran into the forest. I remember feeling awkward when she showed up in a summer dress for the county fair. I was forced to buy a cotton candy that was 3 times the size of her face. But she remembered that she hated sweet things, which made me burst into laughter. Her persona was completely different from when we first met, and I was constantly surprised. That day, we went to a solo exhibition by a female woodcarver who specializes in animal carvings. She enjoyed sitting on a life-sized orangutan carving and playing with the kids. I found the scene somewhat heartwarming and watched while leaning against the wall. "Oh, teacher, hello." Suddenly, I turned toward the sound. There was a familiar-faced boy, grinning at me. "Hey, are you here with your family?" I noticed a girl holding his hand. He nodded with a hearty smile. "You're a teacher?" Out of nowhere, Jenny, who had returned, asked with curiosity. "Oh, are you the teacher's girlfriend? He's a boxing teacher." The boy responded clearly to Jenny's question. "In fact, I'm good at boxing, and I teach grade school kids at the gym run by an old college." Jenny stared at me in surprise, learning this new side of me she wasn't aware of. It was quite embarrassing being stared at so intently. Jenny watched the boy energetically say goodbye and run back to his parents. "You could have hit back, but you didn't," she murmured to herself. I knew she was talking about the time when we first met. "Why didn't you hit back?" she asked, suddenly serious. Taken aback, I looked at Rachel. Her face was very serious. "I just don't like hitting people," I confessed. It may have sounded contradictory, but that was how I truly felt. I knew the pain of hitting someone and being hit. That's why I didn't like hitting people. I think this hesitation was the reason I was always the runner-up. During my school days, I was a runner-up in every competition. I could never fully commit to winning. Every time I came in second place, I felt sorry for my family, who was cheering for me. "Would you say the same thing even when you absolutely need to hit back?" she asked in a cold voice, reminding me of when we first met. I felt a chasm between Jenny and me, unbridgeable. As if we were standing on opposite cliffs overlooking a deep valley. I couldn't answer her question. Ever since our date at the art show, I had lost contact with Jenny, and a week had passed. There was no response to my calls or emails. She used to pick up on the first ring. I was worried that something might have happened. Perhaps I had been written off because I couldn't answer her question at the time. I was anxious to see her again. Just as I was about to try to contact her again, a colleague called out to me. He delivered a message that the director wanted me in his office. I hadn't made any mistakes at work. I put on the jacket I had taken off and knocked on the door to the boss's office. I was told in a low voice to come in. In the boss's office were the boss and the director, and the CEO of a client company. And one more person, the man who had been bothering Jenny, was sitting back on the sofa. "I'm disappointed in you, trying to steal my nephew's fiancée." So, the man who was bothering Jenny was the boss's nephew. The client company's CEO also looked stern. As I stood there dumbfounded, the boss explained. Jenny was the daughter of a client company's CEO and the boss's nephew's fiancée. He emphasized that their marriage was necessary to strengthen the partnership. It seems like they were insisting on a marriage to expand their companies. I was taken aback, wondering what they were talking about. So, in short, the CEO's nephew desperately wants her and he got the company involved, right? The truth just slipped out of my mouth. I felt the temperature in the CEO's office rise dramatically. The CEO of our client company was a person of not no great reputation. I heard that originally, the current CEO's brother was the CEO, but he was kicked out and the current CEO took his seat. He had mistresses here and there and ran the company recklessly, or so the rumors went. "That's enough. I want you to quit the company. We can't afford to keep a thief cat in the company." I'm disgusted by the CEO's ridiculous comment. Next to that CEO, the CEO of the client company is nodding deeply. He says he can't do business with a company where thief cats are present. Personal life and work are separate matters. Annoyed at the nephew grinning at me, I say to the boss, "I don't want to give up on myself, who has been working hard till now, here. I thought this is the time to become desperate." I thought I'm fed up with giving up on Jenny and my job. I'm not interested in your opinion. This is my company, and I don't need you. The CEO points to the exit door and tells me to leave. At that moment, the door he pointed at is opened without a knock. What the hell? We're having an important conversation. The CEO immediately yells at the person who opened the door. However, the next moment, everyone in the CEO's office was stunned and couldn't move. It's been a while. Uncle, my father sends his regards. Jenny said to the CEO without a smile. The boss's nephew, my fiancé, is stunned. Was it you, uncle, who was secretly sniffing around me, or was it my fiancé? It wasn't until Jenny told me that I realized. The CEOs found out about Jenny and my relationship because someone was sniffing around us. Probably someone in this room hired a detective and investigated. And I was caught out. You're also to blame. Meeting secretly with Mike. It's irresponsible behavior while engaged. Jenny snorts at the CEO's words. It was clear that she was looking down on everyone except me. The CEO of the client company warns Jenny, don't meddle. Jenny looks at me and smiles a little. I'll handle this. When Jenny declared that to me, she threw a bundle of documents at the client company's CEO. You're fired, CEO Williams. Jenny said to CEO Williams with cold, icy eyes. CEO Williams, flustered, flips through the documents thrown at him. With each page he turns, his face turns paler. My brother is the CEO from today. Incredible. Jenny conspired with a real brother and took over their father's company. Investing in her father's company from her company, and gradually buying up shares behind. We'll take back my father's company. Jenny glanced at her fiancé, who was totally in shock, and thrust documents at him too. The words compensation were written. I'll claim damages for all the mental distress you've caused, Jenny informs her fiancé. Then her gaze shifts to our company CEO. He flinches slightly. Mr. Mike, I will poach you for our company, and brace yourself, I will bring down this place too. Jenny says, her mouth the only part of her that's smiling, her eyes are not. Is this your idea of revenge? Hearing CEO Williams' squeezing voice, a big smile appeared on Jenny's face. If you compare it with what you've done to my family, it's nothing. The real hell starts now. In truth, Jenny isn't CEO Williams' daughter but his niece. Her biological father was the CEO who was ousted by Williams. Jenny's father, having lost control of the company, died from a combination of stress and overwork. Seemingly, her mother, who had been part of a loving couple, died of illness not long after. Only Jenny and her brother were left. Jenny was taken in by CEO Williams, and her brother was put into a facility. It's likely adopted Jenny because he thought she could be a useful pawn in the future. He probably never imagined that she would turn on him. Jenny had been patiently waiting for a moment of revenge. As CEO Williams collapses in defeat, Jenny looks at him once, then extends a hand to me. Welcome to our company, Mr. Mike. Just as she had declared, Jenny set out to destroy the company where I had been working. The employees tremble at the sight of her relentless advance, with no hesitation or doubt. I started working as a secretary to the CEO at Jenny's company. The CEO is Jenny's real brother, Mr. James. He's the same age as me. The new job was tough in many ways, but somehow I managed. The company seemed to be changing into a more pleasant workplace, freed from dictatorship. I think the brighter expressions of the employees are proof of that. I would love to say everything is going well, but there's one thing that worries me. Jenny has been avoiding me. Ever since the incident in the CEO's office, she has been actively ignoring me. Even when we pass in the hallway, she just acts as if I don't exist. Just when I'm trying to find a way to talk to her, CEO James shows up. Do you know what a Savannah cat is, Mike? Confused by the unrelated topic, I tilt my head. A Savannah cat is a breed of cat born from the crossbreeding of a serval cat and a domestic cat. It's about the size of a dog. Depending on the breed, it is necessary to register with the local government to keep one. That large, mountain lion-like cat, right? They're rare in Japan, I reply. Mr. James then asks me to somehow arrange for a Savannah kitten. As the CEO's secretary, it's not unusual to be relied upon for personal matters as well as work. James, being the same age as me, often makes unusual requests. I thought it would cheer Kaidos up. She hasn't been her usual self lately, he says with a look of concern. Indeed, if I showed Jenny, who demanded to keep a baby lion, a Savannah cat, she'd be ecstatic. Sure thing, Mr. James is pretty indulgent towards Jenny. Understood. I'll look into it right away. And prepare a cake that she would like. It's her birthday soon. When I heard cake, I was surprised. Chelsea is supposed to dislike sweets. Mr. James should know that. Jenny doesn't like sweets and can't eat them, right, but a cake. At my words, Mr. James seemed taken aback and sat down on the spot, scratching his head. I was taken aback by his sudden strange behavior. Holding his head, Mr. James muttered, "That girl, what a fool." Apparently, when Jenny was little, she loved cakes. When her family got together for her birthdays, she would beg her father for various types of cakes. Even when the company was taken over, her father would still buy her a cake. Then, the day after Jenny's birthday, her father collapsed and never came back. Jenny believes it's all her fault. Mr. James told me that she thinks if she endures her favorite, her father will come to see her. Mr. James never expected that even now, as a college student, she would still hold on to that wish. Take back the company, crush the trading company that drove her father to ruin. Jenny, who coldly gets everything done, is still a young girl who just wants to see her father. When I think about how much she's sacrificed to regain happiness, I feel like tears will overflow. I promised Mr. James about the Savannah cat and pleaded with him to tell me where Jenny was. I just want to talk to her. I drove to the place Mr. James told me. The personal exhibition we went to together is on its final day, and Jenny is said to be there. In the exhibition room filled with the excited voices of children, I find Chelsea, lost in thought. She was staring at a family looking at a wooden bear, seemingly enjoying themselves. Her profile looks expressionless, yet it also seems like she could burst into tears any moment. Found her. I gently whispered and gripped her hand so she couldn't run away. Jenny, who looked back in surprise, had noticeably lost weight since I last saw her. "Why are you avoiding me?" She shudders at my question. I stopped her from trying to run away by tightly gripping her hand. With a resigned look, she relaxed and said in a small voice, "Because you hate hitting, don't you?" Jenny continued in a small voice, thinking I despised her because I hate hitting. Her voice was shaking slightly. "I hate and am bad at hitting, but it depends on the time and place. I've changed my mind a bit." I spoke to Jenny as gently as possible. "If it's for you, I'm sure I can handle it." Upon hearing my words, Jenny started shedding tears. She told me she feels terrible for affecting innocent employees' families by taking over companies. But she always acted tough, to show that the person she resents is herself. She says she's prepared to carry all the blame and live her life. "Is there anything I can do for you?" I gently asked the crying girl. Then, in a small voice, she replied, "Stay by me. Like my dad, don't disappear. Always be by my side." I wanted to hold her right away, but I restrained myself. Instead, I put a lot of strength into the hand we were holding. "Understood. I'll always be by your side, Jenny. Can you smile at me every day?" At my question, Jenny cried and nodded many times. While watching her tears, I made a promise to myself. I will never make her cry again after today. I'd even import a Savannah cat if it's for her. Surely, she'll hug the big cat and show me a full-faced smile. The more the merrier when it comes to family, right? As I muttered this, looking at families around us, Jenny's face turned beet red. Isn't it a bit early for that? Not at all. I think about our way home from the art exhibition. I will buy a ring at a jewelry shop on the way. I was thinking about this, looking at Jenny's blushing face. Who would have thought that our meeting that day would lead to this? I had no idea back then. Now, I'm grateful to God for our encounter that day. My name is Jason Miller. I'm 25, just your average office worker. In my quiet and low-key life, I have an older brother named Kevin, who is the complete opposite of me. Ever since our school days, Kevin was flashy and loved to stand out, always surrounded by friends and followers. If that was all, it would have been fine, but he was often in fights during school, and my mother was constantly called in. No matter how many times he was summoned to school, or how much he made our mom cry, Kevin never seemed to care. For better or worse, he was someone who never allowed himself to be swayed by others, always going his own way. Our mother, who raised us alone, sometimes wondered if she had made a mistake in how she brought him up. But I don't think so. Whether or not our father was present, Kevin would have lived his life freely, just as he does now. That's just who he is. There's nothing to do but give up. Upon graduating high school, Kevin left home. He's been living from paycheck to paycheck, constantly switching between part-time jobs. When we were kids, we played together all the time since we were close in age, more like friends than brothers. But as we grew older, our relationship deteriorated. Or rather, our personalities were too different, and by the time we reached adolescence, we stopped talking to each other. Even though we lived in the same house, it felt like we were strangers. That's why I didn't feel lonely when Kevin left home. I only wished that he wouldn't cause trouble for anyone as a member of our family. But of course, my wish went unanswered. When I started working, I moved out and lived alone, but I often went back home because I was worried about my mother. One day, while visiting home, Kevin suddenly showed up out of the blue. This happened when Kevin was 26. It was his first time home since high school, so it had been about 8 years. Standing next to Kevin was a petite woman with delicate features. With her beautiful face, she bowed deeply to my mother and me, who were frozen at the entrance. "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Nancy, Kevin's girlfriend." Nancy, who introduced herself with an apologetic look, was next to Kevin, who was uninterestedly looking away. Both my mom and I were surprised. Kevin's girlfriends had come to our house before, but none of them were as polite as Nancy, who greeted us. They used to ignore us, or even smoke confidently in our house. But then, Kevin made a shocking statement. "I'd am married. This is my wife, she's due in the summer. Take care." Next to my stepmother, I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Married, and she's pregnant." In response to our reactions, Nancy bowed her head again. "I'm really sorry." Seeing Nancy bow her head weakly, both my mom and I managed to calm down. We decided to hear the details from Nancy, who seemed more willing to talk than Kevin. Nancy is 22. She had been working part-time since graduating high school, but she now has an office job. She happened to meet Kevin in a bar, they started dating, and she soon found out she was pregnant. They just got married, and she's currently 5 months pregnant. I had heard from Kevin that he had already spoken to his family about our marriage registration and my pregnancy, said Nancy, her voice wavering. Until recently, I was bedridden due to severe morning sickness. I had no idea he hadn't spoken. I'm really sorry. Nancy's parents had passed away and she appeared to be estranged from her relatives. From what I had heard, she seemed to be a sensible person, and I couldn't fathom why she was dating Kevin, let alone considering marrying him. But there was a new life growing inside her, so turning her away wasn't an option. Moreover, Kevin seemed incapable of holding down a job for long and was careless with money, leaving him with no savings. Nancy found out only this morning that he was even in debt. When Nancy pointed out their inability to sustain a livelihood, Kevin casually suggested they move in with his parents. My mother and I were dumbstruck. Nancy apologized to us repeatedly, saying she would work and would not cause us any trouble. Kevin, who had put her in debt and impregnated her, did not apologize. However, I couldn't abandon pregnant Nancy, so I accepted her and Kevin into our home. I apologize for my foolish son. Nancy, you must feel helpless without your parents. You must be worried about your living situation because of Kevin. Please live here. I'm still working, and I want you to take care of yourself and prepare for the birth, my mother said. At her words, Nancy's eyes welled up with tears. I'm sorry. As soon as I give birth and am able to work, I will start working immediately. I promise to repay this kindness, she vowed. Both things have gone awry. We are family, and that's what matters. Let's help each other out. Kevin, you need to work hard too. No more wasting money. That's the condition of you living here, got it? Kevin grudgingly accepted the condition. I get it, he muttered. And so, the three of them, my mother, Kevin, and Nancy, started living together. I had been sending money to my mother and decided to increase the amount. My mother told me I didn't need to do that for Kevin, but I was not doing it for him. I was doing it so that my mother and Nancy could live comfortably. There were many things about Kevin that were irritating and frustrating. But what was vexing was the fact that the ones who had to deal with this were our mother and his pregnant wife, Nancy. I was concerned if Nancy, who had just met Kevin after many years of him not coming home, and his mother could manage to live together, but their cohabitation was surprisingly going well. Kevin seemed to be working, and Nancy was a hard worker and considerate, which made life seem more comfortable for our mother. In fact, when Nancy's belly began to grow and she wanted to slow down, it appeared that our mother was there to support her. However, such a life didn't last long. As Nancy entered her final month of pregnancy and they thought the baby might be born any moment, Kevin disappeared. He went to work as usual but never came back. When they called his workplace, they found out that Kevin had gotten into a fight with a coworker and abruptly declared "I quit" a few days ago, and indeed he never showed up to work after that. They haven't been able to get in touch with him since. We had considered accidents or incidents, but they found Kevin's note on the desk in his bedroom. I can't handle this life after all. Being a father too, not happening, sorry. That was it. With just that, Kevin had abandoned Nancy and the child that was about to be born. Nancy broke down crying. She was so distraught that it made me and my mother worried. She didn't have a family home to return to. Kevin was her only family to rely on. I imagine she was terrified about what life would be like with a child on the way. Nancy talked about leaving the house right away. I can't impose on you with Kevin, John. There's no blood relation between me, my child, and you. I can't be that much of a burden. The one who stopped Nancy from leaving was my mother. She begged her to stay at least until the baby was born. My mother was probably worried about Nancy being alone too. About a month later, Nancy gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Mia. But while Mia was fine, Nancy fell sick after childbirth. She kept bleeding and had a fever that wouldn't go down. There was no way Nancy and Mia could live on their own, so they continued to live together. During that time, they had many discussions and decided that our mother, Nancy, and her baby Mia would continue to live together and raise Mia. I moved closer to their house and supported them as much as I could. I thought there might be times when they would need a man's help. Once, I asked Nancy what she thought of Kevin, who had irresponsibly left without even getting a divorce. I thought she might be holding a deep grudge. But Nancy wasn't harboring any resentment. Kevin was never good at living his life. He was a burden to those around him and only thought about himself. But he reached out to me when I was lonely and chose to be with me. I know he's a hopeless case, but I just can't bring myself to hate him because he gave me a family when I was all alone. I guess I just don't have a good judgment when it comes to men. She said that with a lonely smile, a smile that I think I'll remember for the rest of my life. I would have treated her better, wouldn't have made her suffer, even though I thought that I couldn't express it. Nancy was my brother Kevin's wife after all. 2 years passed, and then one day, my brother Kevin passed away. We learned about it from a call from the police. Apparently, Kevin had been living about an hour away by train. But his life was as aimless as ever. He was jumping from job to job, getting into fights from time to time. He often drank with friends until the early morning hours. And in the end, he died in a drunk driving accident. I'm sorry, Nancy. It's all because of my poor parenting that things ended up like this. Mom, having lost her son, apologized with tears swelling in her eyes. But Nancy gently stroked Mom's shoulder. It's my fault as his wife. I couldn't keep him with our family. Both Mom and Nancy blamed themselves. So, I glared at Kevin's portrait. Neither Mom nor Nancy are at fault. It was Kevin's life. Only Kevin is responsible. Both Mom and Nancy weakly nodded at my words. But when we went to Kevin's apartment to sort out his belongings, we discovered something. Apparently, Kevin, who was known for his reckless spending, had been saving money in his bank account. On the cover of the bank book, in messy handwriting, it said, "Nancy's and the kids' money. Don't use it, me." Whether he was trying to turn over a new leaf or was attempting to atone in his own way, we'll never know now. What's clear is that Kevin was saving money for Nancy and little Mia. When I saw Kevin's handwriting on that bank book, I cried for the first time since his death. My big brother, who was so bad at living, an irredeemable mess. But he was trying to change for his family. Not only me, but Nancy and Mom seemed to feel something from this fact, and we all cried together. He was by no means a good guy, but he was still my only brother. No matter how messed up he is, it seems that saying goodbye to family is always hard. I understood that. After saying goodbye to Kevin, we were met with yet another tragedy. Right after a month after Kevin's death, Mom passed away from a heart attack. There was no warning. It was all of a sudden one day. Nancy and I were completely knocked down by this. But somehow, I kept my footing, supporting Nancy. I was the only one left who could extend a hand to her and little Mia. In the 2 years since Kevin left us, Nancy had become more than my brother's wife to me. She had become the woman I loved, the woman I wanted to protect. Because of this, I had to stay strong. With this thought, I desperately held back my tears. Even after my mother's funeral, there were tons of things to think about, like what to do with the house, how and where Nancy and Mia were going to live. Maybe all of these concerns took a toll on her. Nancy fell sick. I explained the situation to my workplace and managed to get some time off. Someone was needed to take care of Nancy, and someone was also needed to look after Mia. Nancy kept saying, "I'm fine," but I insisted. And so, I ended up living under the same roof with my beautiful sister-in-law, now a widow. Since I had often played with Mia before, I managed to take care of her. Little Mia, who still didn't understand that my mother and Kevin were gone, played energetically that day and fell asleep. Nancy and I fought to go to sleep as well, but there were no guest beds in our parents' house. Mia's bed was for children, and the only adult-sized one was Nancy's. Sleeping in my mother's or Kevin's bed felt wrong. "There's only one bed, huh?" Upon my murmur, Nancy, who was slumped on the couch, answered in a small voice, "I'm fine." "What?" I looked at Nancy's face in surprise. Her tone didn't sound like she was joking, but I didn't think she was serious either. Nancy's expression was gloomy, and I understood from it that she was feeling extremely lonely and vulnerable right now. So, I forced a smile. I wanted Nancy to keep her spirits up. "I'm a big guy, you know. You'd be crushed if we slept together," I said. After a moment's pause, Nancy broke out laughing. "Haha, you're right, sorry. I'll sleep on the couch. You take the bed and get a good night's sleep. Sorry, I know it might be hard to relax with me in the house." As I said this, Nancy patted the spot next to her on the couch. "Don't worry about it. Sit down here for a bit. It's nice to have someone around after so long. Would you like to chat for a bit?" There was no way I could refuse an invitation from the woman I loved, so I sat down next to Nancy. She then let out a sigh. She looked good, so she seemed to be feeling okay for now. "A lot has happened," she said. "After Kevin, my mother also passed away, leaving just Nancy, Mia, and me. I'm sorry, my family, they've brought nothing but sadness to you and Mia," I said. Upon hearing my words, Nancy clenched her hand that was resting on her knee. "Losing your mother was devastating, but about Kevin, it's complicated. Why did he leave us? If he regretted it and was saving money for us, why didn't he come back sooner? I sometimes feel like complaining about him, but then I hate myself for thinking such things about someone who's passed away." Nancy's voice trembled, and I felt a tightening in my chest. And what's with drunk driving? He was really hopeless, but I knew he was that kind of person. I should have stopped him, but I couldn't, and he's gone now. When I think that Mia and I couldn't be the reason for him to turn over a new leaf, I feel so empty. Nancy was blaming herself. I placed my hand on Nancy's. Her hand was shockingly cold. So, I gently held it, trying to warm it up. Nancy didn't shake off my hand. "Nancy, it's okay. Don't blame yourself so much. Kevin was always a selfish man, but even so, he was trying to save money for his family before he passed away. The very fact that he was trying to do something for someone else was an incredible thing, and it was undoubtedly thanks to you and Mia that he could do so. That was my true feelings. But I don't want Nancy to be trapped in thoughts of Kevin forever. I want her to seek her own happiness more. Nancy, am I not good enough? I won't let you or Mia suffer any more sadness. Will you live by my side from now on?" Nancy was silent for a long time. Then, looking into my eyes, she slowly opened her mouth. "If it weren't for you, if I hadn't had you, Jason, I wouldn't have been able to survive. I think I feel the same as you, but please give me a little more time. I need time to come to terms with the reality that my Mill and Kevin are no longer with us." I understood Nancy's feelings very well. That's why I responded that I would wait, no matter how long it took. A year later, Nancy, Mia, and I together performed a memorial service for Kevin and our mother. then visited their graves. As we stood at the gravesite, I reflected on the past year that Nancy and I had supported each other. It seemed that Nancy had been able to reconcile her feelings over the course of the year. Today, Nancy was showing a smile as if she had let go of everything. And then, with her hands joined at the grave, she said, "Please give me your son, Mill. I promise to make him happy." Mia mimicked her, exclaiming, "Please." So I also clasped my hands. I'll make Nancy and Mia so happy that Kevin will regret what he left behind. Let him regret it from above. At my words, Nancy showed a full-faced smile. Then, the three of us, with Mia in the middle, held hands and went home. I won't let go of these hands, no matter what happens. That much I've decided. I hope you enjoyed this. Subscribing to the channel will be a great encouragement for me to create more content. See you in the next video.